Hello, everyone. My name is Noelle Russell, and today I am going to share some of my tips for how to get your kids to eat healthy. Okay, I'm a mom of three. Right now, my oldest is 10. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. Um, and there are so many days where I look at what my kids are eating or I look what I'm doing with them and I think, gosh, we have so far to go. And then there's other times where I look around the table at dinner time and I see them eating salmon and grilled asparagus and a salad, and I think, wow, we've come so far. And I think from the outside looking in, you can think, wow, you have it easy. Your kids eat so healthy. But it hasn't always been this way. Like I said, my oldest is 10, and I have worked really hard over the past 10 years with my husband and kids. My husband, when I met him, we've been married for 15 years. We dated for 3 years before we got married, so I've known him a really long time. And he is a very picky eater. When I met him, he was a very picky eater. And now, if you see all the things that he eats, you would be as amazed as me of how far he's come. Well, when my son was born, um, and when he was a toddler, he is a very picky eater. So much like my husband that it just makes you think that there has to be some genetics there. Now, my middle daughter and my youngest, they aren't as picky. So they're much more likely to look at something and say, okay, I'll try it, and then form an opinion. Where my husband and my son will look at something and say, oh, I don't even want to try that. Okay, so the first thing I think to understand as a parent, especially if you have younger kids, toddlers, and you're just really struggling with them, is that every child is different. And what works for one might not work for another. And some kids are just a lot more cautious when it comes to trying new foods. Some kids are really hung up on texture issues. And so it really takes trial and error to see what works, and what works for your first child might not work for your second. And one child might be really easy to get to eat healthy foods, where another one might be a challenge all the time. And I guess my first point is that I just want to encourage you to keep trying. Okay? Because I look at myself now, and if I could talk to the me 10 years ago, I would say that girl, that mom 10 years ago, was so frustrated and didn't know if it would ever get easier. And I look at myself now and I look at how far we've come. And I just want to encourage younger moms to say all of the hard work is totally worth it. Every time you try to introduce a new healthy food, every time you sit through a meal where there's tears and there's whining, it will pay off in the end. Okay? Our job as parents is not to be our kids' best friends, right? Yes, I have a soft heart. I have a very sensitive heart. So seeing my kids upset, seeing them crying, it really pulls at my heart. But I know deep down in my heart that my job is to teach my kids how to fuel their bodies well, because I don't want them to struggle as teenagers. I don't want them to struggle as adults. And right now, as a fitness and nutrition coach and mentor, I work with so many adults that have a lot of issues with food that stems all the way back from when they were a child or a teenager, and the example that was set for them by their parents. And it's so hard to break those habits. So I encourage you that every frustrating day you have with your young kids on trying to teach them good eating habits is worth it. So keep going. Okay, so I just jotted down some notes of, if I could talk to the mom I was 9 or 10 years ago, what would I tell her? Tip number 1 is lead by example. So if you don't want your kids to drink pop, for instance, you can't get out a can of soda every day and say it's okay for you but not for them. Or if you want them to eat more fruits and vegetables but you're not eating fruits and vegetables, it's kind of hard for them, right? So my number one tip is to lead by example. Show your kids how you want them to eat. Show them how to fuel your body well, and they will pick up on those clues. Even if they fight you on it, even if they don't want to try new things, they are watching everything you do. Okay, so that's tip number one. Tip number two is to take baby steps. I see so many people where you'll get on, you'll get really motivated and you'll want to go change a whole bunch of things. That is stressful for young kids. It's stressful for adults, right? To go and all of a sudden have all these new foods. So something I have found that works really well with myself and my family is to take baby steps, to focus on one thing at a time. So maybe this week you focus on just one thing. Maybe you focus on, okay, this week we're going to have a vegetable every night with our dinner. That's it. You don't stress them with a bunch of other things. Take one thing at a time, okay? Because I think when you get overwhelmed, your natural response is like, whoa, this is too much all at once, and then you start to resist the change, okay? Because so much of what we do with food and drink is habit, and breaking habits are really hard. So I encourage you, baby steps compound over time. You might think like, oh, this small little thing doesn't really matter, but get that down and then move on to the next thing and then move on to the next thing. And 3 months from now, you'll look back and say, wow, look at all these things we've changed. We've really made a lot of progress. And that's kind of how I look back at the past 10 years and think like, wow, we've made a lot of progress, but it didn't come overnight. What I do now for my kids, that wasn't happening 10 years ago. Okay, so baby steps are where it's at. Okay, my next tip is if you are introducing a new food, I have, over the past 10 years, I've done a lot of trial and error of what works. And I have found when I'm doing something new that I sense there's going to be a resistance to, I will start with a very small serving. And still to this day, for instance, if I'm putting asparagus on their plate, my kids, they wouldn't pick asparagus if there was a buffet of different vegetables. That would not be their first pick or their second pick. So when I make asparagus, I give them a small amount and I encourage them to eat that small amount. And anytime I'm introducing something new or I'm putting something like that, like I know it's not their favorite thing, but I want them to get used to it, I always make sure I have other things on the plate that they enjoy. So that way the whole dinner isn't a stressful thing for them. Okay. My next tip is I keep it really simple. I keep it really simple. And I'm sure there's some of you that probably would look at our menu and think, wow, that's really boring. But for me, I know, especially starting out with my husband and my son, they don't like a bunch of things mixed together. I can't throw a bunch of things in the crock pot and they will eat that. So if I keep it simple with having grilled chicken or baked chicken, and then I have a very simple vegetable like green beans, and then I have a very simple starch like brown rice separate on their plate, that is not stressful as putting together some kind of casserole. Okay, so you have to see what works with your family, but I keep it simple. And what I have found is I have gotten down to kind of 7 to 10 main meals that we just keep on rotation. Yes, it might be boring, but every time I give them the meal that has asparagus, they're getting more and more used to it. So I'm not trying new recipes all the time and stressing them out. I will have very similar meals, probably six nights out of the week, and maybe one time a week I'll try something new. And then if that kind of goes okay, then we'll reintroduce it again. So that's something I do too. I keep it very simple and I'm consistent. So if there's something I want to work into rotation, like, wow, this was such a quick and easy meal for a weeknight, I will just keep it in the rotation over and over. And I can't tell you how many meals used to have tears every time that I would serve it. And now my kids are like, ooh, yay, I love this meal. And it's the dumbest stuff too. I can remember when my son would be in tears over brown rice, in tears, gagging on the brown rice, which is so silly now because now my kids will sit down and gobble it up and we have it all the time and they don't think twice about it. But I probably served it to them thousands of times and now It's not new. They're used to it. They have it all the time. They eat it. It's not a big deal. So the other point, which I kind of wanted to make in the beginning, is if you have a 3 or a 4-year-old that is really struggling with new foods, that is totally normal. When my oldest was 3 or 4, we had tears all the time. Anytime there was something new, that's totally normal. Okay, that's a really rough age. They're trying to, assert themselves and have an opinion, and some kids are just not. They're very strong-willed. They know what they want. They know what they don't want, and you just have to guide them with love and be patient. Lots of patience, lots of patience. Okay, and the one thing that I found when my kids were little is I focused on vegetables that they liked. So when my son was little, green beans he liked, corn he liked, and carrots. So instead of forcing broccoli all the time, instead of having salad all the time, instead of always having things that I knew were going to cause tears for him, I focused on green beans, carrots, corn, green beans, carrots, corn. Maybe it's boring. Maybe he wasn't getting the full gamut of all the vitamins and minerals from all the vegetables out there, but he was getting in vegetables every night at dinner because I focused on the small things, or the small category that he liked. And then over time, then, I put in broccoli. And then I put in broccoli, and I put in broccoli. And now all my kids eat broccoli, and they love broccoli. Same thing with asparagus. Same things with all these other vegetables. Now my kids eat salad. None of them would eat salad a couple years ago. They would be so upset about having salad on their plate. Now it's not a big deal. So if fruits and vegetables, if that's something that your young ones really struggle with, focus on the ones that they really like and just be consistent with it. And my next tip is, if you have a stressful dinner, say you are tonight, we're all gonna eat steamed carrots at dinner. That's my goal for tonight. And you get to dinner tonight, and 1 or 2 of your kids are really upset. It's really stressful. It's one of those nights where you have to stay at the table until you finish your 3 carrots, and you're like, this is totally not worth it, blah, blah, blah. One of my tips is, if you have a stressful dinner over something new and healthy, make the next night not stressful. Pick something that's, they're used to eating, that they're okay with. You kind of want to manage that stressful thing. So for me, it's important to keep introducing new foods. It's important for them to get healthy meals in, but I also have that balance of, if I have a meal that I know it's not their favorite thing, I do this now, I will put that in. I know it's not your favorite thing. I know it's not my husband's favorite thing, but it's something I enjoy. It's something healthy. It's something that fits my meal plan. Then I make sure that the next night, it's something that's not stressful for them. Okay? So even if they're not eating great, they're not getting a ton in on that night where it's something that they don't really like, I know the next night they're going to have a good big meal. So that's another tip. Okay, and then you'll find, at least I found, my kids are different on how they respond to things. So with one of my kids, positive reinforcement is much more effective than negative reinforcement. So if we're at a meal and there's something that this child doesn't like, getting upset, getting frustrated, having consequences, all of that backfires. But if it's something, I know for this one child, if I just say, okay, I gave you a very small amount of, we'll use asparagus, for example. I gave you a very small amount of asparagus. Asparagus is going to give you vitamins and minerals. It's healthy. It comes from the earth. It's good for you. It's good for your body. It's good fuel. I'm not expecting you to love it, but I'm expecting you to eat it. And I leave it at that. I don't give them any more attention about that. You know what you have to do before you can leave the table. That's it. And we just let it go. Now I know if I keep saying, like, come on, you need to keep going. Come on, you need to eat that. Take a bite, take a bite. It builds up that resistance to fight. But if I don't give any attention, I just say, here's my expectations. You know when you can get down. And I leave it at that, and I focus on the other kids that aren't having issues with the dinner. That works for that child. So you kind of have to see what works. Do you need tough love, or do you need more attention, less attention, positive reinforcement, consequences? It's all trial and error, right? And you'll find what works for your children as they grow. Like I said, it's been 10 years of trial and error as a mother. I'm not perfect at this, but I've certainly learned a lot and I've certainly made a lot of progress. So one of my goals is to just share as much as I can with other moms that are struggling with the same things that I've struggled with, because I want to give you hope and I want to give you a plan so that you can go and make improvements with your family and your kids. All right. All right, next point. I personally believe that sometimes you have to focus on better choices before you can get to best. So if you look at my pantry, if you look at all my meals, if you look at my kids' lunches, their breakfast, there's some times where you would probably say, oh my gosh, I can't believe she lets them eat that, right? Because I focus on better before best. So that means when I want them to eat raw veggies, I will let them have ranch dip to dip it in. That's not the ranch that I would prefer that they have. It has oils in it that I don't like. It's whatever. I keep trying with the ranch dips to get a healthier one, and I have resistance from my 2 kids that like ranch dip. So that's something I give on. You know what? They're still eating a whole handful of raw carrots with that little bit of ranch dip. That's something that is balanced, okay? Things like ketchup. If there is turkey tenderloin, and one of my daughters has a little bit of trouble with turkey tenderloin, she asks if she can have some ketchup to dip it in. I will let her have the ketchup because she's still getting the healthy part, even if she's getting some sugar from the ketchup, whatever. It's balance. Sometimes you have to get to better before you get to best. Same thing with like cooking. I really scale back on seasonings for them. So when I know that something's going to have, when it calls for, I don't know, onions and mushrooms and stuff that I know that they're not going to like, I'll leave that stuff out and make it plainer so that it appeals their taste buds better. And I'm okay with that. As they grow, they will get more adventuresome with eating, just like I did. I was really picky when I was younger, and that's something I've really worked on. So I kind of give on that kind of stuff. Let's see. The other thing I do when talking about balance is I rotate. So my kids love pancakes and waffles. They would eat pancakes and waffles with syrup on it every single morning if I let them. But now we have a rule. Instead of just saying we're never going to have waffles, I have transitioned to a healthier, low sugar waffle brand. And when we have waffles, then the next day when they say, oh, can we have waffles? I'll say, well, we had waffles yesterday, so today we have to have a healthier choice. That's kind of like a treat. So today we're going to have a healthier choice for breakfast. And I'll kind of rotate through. And now they're like, okay. And they deal with it because that's part of the thing. They still get to have their waffles and syrup for breakfast, but it's not an every morning thing. So it's not a battle because they just know, okay, that's a treat. We can't have that all the time. Okay, and along those lines, now my kids, like I said, they're 10, 8, and 6. I work really hard on not labeling that food is bad, that food is good. We never talk about weight. We never talk about like body image stuff. What I've really tried to focus on with my family is food is fuel. So when we're talking about different foods, somebody's not bad if they consume such and such all the time. Somebody is not bad if they have one habit or another or whatever. What I try to teach them is that food is fuel. So when I put down, dinner and we have chicken and green beans and something else, I will call them out. I'll say, okay, this chicken is protein. It will help you with your muscles. It will help keep you full. It will help you with this. When we talk about vegetables, we talk about what those will do for your body. When they want to have some kind of treat, I will say, you know what, that's a treat. It's really high in sugar. So that's going to fill your belly up. Or crackers, for instance. Okay, they would eat crackers all day long, but then they eat crackers and they're hungry again. Why? Because it doesn't keep you full. So I will explain, crackers are fine. You can eat those crackers, but they're going to fill your belly up, but then you're going to be hungry again. So you want to pair that with a little bit of protein. Or, I will explain that kind of stuff. Like, yes, that tastes good and that has sugar in it, but it's not going to give you energy. It's not going to fuel you up. I will also explain, I have one daughter that seems a little bit sensitive to things with dairy and gluten. And when she says things like, my belly hurts, I will stop and say, okay, well, that's probably like yesterday. She's like, my belly hurts. I'm like, well, honey, that's because you had ice cream. My son had an orthodontics appointment. He had to have more brackets put on. That's very stressful, doing stuff in his mouth. It usually ends up hurting. He ends up with a headache. He's prone to migraine stuff. So we went and we had ice cream. They said soft foods for 24 hours. I went and I let them have ice cream. Okay. And so last night her belly was hurting and I said, well, honey, dairy seems to bother your stomach. I'm sure it's the ice cream. So you just either have to get in that mindset of you can go and you can have that ice cream, but we're going to have to keep it to a small amount, or we're going to have to focus on ice cream that's not made with cow's milk because that seems to bother your belly. So I will explain that to them, that it's okay to have those things. It's not bad to go and stop for ice cream. That's totally fine to have a treat. But if it hurts your belly, if it makes it hard to go to the bathroom, if it makes your belly crumbly, then you have a choice to make. Next time this has this impact on me, maybe I should have a smaller amount, or maybe I should skip that. So it's a lot of teaching. Now, granted, my kids are a little bit older, so something like that isn't going to work with a 3-year-old per se. But the more you talk about what food does for your body, I think they grow up just with that in the back of their mind. So when my kids go to college and they have free reign of whatever they want to eat, I want them to be armed with the knowledge of, okay, I can go out and have these things, but if I feel crummy afterwards, I know it's because I just had a ton of sugar. Or I know it's because I had a ton of bread yesterday and that's why I'm so bloated and my belly hurts. So it's kind of taking away the emotions associated with one food or drink or another, and just kind of labeling, this is good fuel, or this tastes good, but it's not really going to do anything for me, or this is going to have a negative effect on my body and how I feel or how I look or whatever. So I do a lot of teaching. All right. Those are my top tips. I did ask my daughter today when I was preparing these notes, just asking her, my 8-year-old, what are some things that help you? And I had to laugh. That the one thing she mentioned is, don't tell your kids how you made something if it's new, or the ingredients. And I laughed and she said, why is that funny? Well, I made these muffins yesterday, or 2 days ago, and it's a new recipe. And you mash up banana, and it's gluten-free, it's grain-free, it's no sugar, whatever. And she said, if I hadn't seen, if I see you making that, I'm not going to want that. But if you just gave me the muffin and I didn't know what was in it, then I would eat it. So it was just funny when she said, sometimes I don't want to know how it's made until after I've tried it, because it makes me think I'm not going to like it. And I thought that was a really good thing to bring out. So sometimes I like to sometimes I think it helps to have my kids involved with the cooking. My middle one loves to cook and bake with me. But then there's sometimes where my family will say, okay, this is new. What's in this? And I'll say, I'll let you know after you try it. So they don't have that opinion of ooh, it has that in it. Oh, I'm not going to like it. Okay. Because so much of this is mental. So much of it is mental. Along those lines, with my son now, who continues to be picky, there are times where I put something on his plate, and he's just really struggling with it. He's had a couple nights this week with some things that he's really been struggling with. And now I know it comes down to, I will tell him, I'm like, hey, it's mind over matter. This is good for your body. I gave you a small amount. I expect you to eat it. Mind over matter. You can do this. Okay? I don't expect you to love it, but I expect you to get yourself under control and eat it. And that's why I talk to him. A lot of times it is purely mental. When I say everyone around the table is eating this, if we can all eat it, you can too. And I leave it at that. And then he will end up eating it. So there are a lot of nights where I've had one child sitting at the table after everybody's gone. I've cleaned up the whole kitchen and they're still sitting there. Sometimes that happens. But you know what? We've made so much progress by I'm consistent. So if I say I'm giving you a small amount and I expect you to eat it, I follow through, even when it's hard. And I think you have to do that with any kind of discipline or teaching as a parent is when you say something, you have to follow through, right? Which is really hard to do because sometimes you don't want to follow through with it. You just want them to avoid the consequence, right? So I found that if I'm just consistent and I pick my battles and I try to make it as decreasing the stress as much as possible, then that seems to work. Some other times when my kids have really been struggling, now I've tried all kinds of things. I've tried, you have to at least have one bite. I've tried, you have to eat all of this before you can have that. I've tried all kinds of things. Now I've come to my kids are a little bit older. Now when they're really struggling with something and they want to get down, there are times where I say, you know what? All right, if you want to get down, that's fine, but I'm going to save it. And the next time you're hungry, that's what you're going to get. So are you okay with that choice? And you know what? There are times where they get down, say they're struggling with a vegetable or there's a healthy dinner and we have to get out the door for dance or whatever. And it's like, that's fine. If you want to sit there and pick at it and you don't want to eat it because you know that we have to be out the door and you can't sit here, then I will save it for you. And when you get home from dance and you're hungry, I'm going to bring it out of the fridge and heat it up for you. And you know what? When they come home, when that daughter comes home and she says, oh, I'm hungry, I follow through and get that out of the fridge and heat it up, even though in my heart, I don't want to do that because I know that's not what she wants. And I see the sad look on her face and it tugs at my heartstrings. I follow through. Okay. So there are times like that where it's like, it's tough love because I know my job is to teach them how to fuel their bodies well. Okay. So those are my main tips. Hopefully, I know I'm like so passionate about helping people with good nutrition that sometimes I just keep talking and talking and talking. So I apologize, this went longer than I wanted to, but I am happy to help. If you are struggling with your kids and you have specific issues and you are just frustrated, I am happy to chat with you anytime. Send me a message. We can set up a phone call. We can get together face to face. We can do a Zoom chat, a video chat. I'm really passionate about giving other parents hope and just empowering you to not only take charge of your health, but take charge of the health of your kids and your family and the future for all of you. So if you are struggling with anything with nutrition, I encourage you, keep trying over and over and over again. Okay. And if you need support, I'm here for you. If you have any questions, post below, send me an email at noellerussellfitness@gmail.com. And I am happy to help anytime. I hope you all have a great day.